Friday time, MSP Confidential time. Welcome back. It's I don't know. It's almost the end of March already. Q1 is over. People are thinking about how they got their year started and if they had any success or not. And one of the things that is kind of important in that measurement is marketing. And so I have a very special guest today joining me, Megan Killion of MKC Agency. Megan, so good to have you on finally for a chat. I'm looking forward to getting spicy here with you. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm gonna jump right in because we've been kind of chatting backstage about the little bits and pieces that people maybe think about or talk about marketing wise, and we had titled this this idea of build or buy marketing. And so let's start right there. As a marketing agency, it's a little bit counterintuitive to suggest to people that they should maybe insource and build internally. Walk me through a bit of your thought process on that.
Yeah, so I think probably the best place to start is with a story. I had a client over the last about year and a half who was really, really struggling. And they were a fractional CRO client, not an agency client, but they had gone through three agencies, one right before we engaged, and then two while we were engaging. And every time it was a flop. And I kind of kept sitting down and being like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing it? We're going to go do this again. And finally, I essentially put my foot down and was like, let's go hire a marketing coordinator, somebody junior, like we don't even have to break the bank. We'll pay them less than you're paying the agency and let's see if it works better. And we brought on this young girl, like recent college grad. Her primary focus and expertise was really in like creative and social media. Didn't have a ton of like strategic chops, but I sat with her and was just like, hey, this is the strategy. This is what we're trying to do. Here's how I think you can help. Here's a 90-day plan. Run with it. And I see her maybe once a month, once every 6 weeks.
Mm.
Since she started with them, they went from having no social media presence at all to having the best social media presence in their local region. They have inbound leads for the first time ever. And they're finally kind of taking action on one of their core goals, which was to make it less the founder show and more about the whole company and the whole team, because she is going into everybody's office and doing little micro interviews with them, taking pictures of the team while they're working, telling great stories, sitting down with the service delivery manager and pulling out of them like, hey, how are we helping our clients? So that's the story. But the reason why ultimately comes down to the traditional way that MSPs outsource is that they outsource to a system, pre-built system, and it's just plug and play. We've done it for hundreds of other MSPs. We can do it for you too. The number one challenge in the MSP space today is that there's a ton of competition.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter what geo you're in or what market you're in. There is competition. There are other people who do what you do.
Super commoditized.
It's really easy to sell and market when you just have great product market fit and you're kind of either the only solution or the obviously superior solution. MSPs don't have that. They really have to stand out from all of these others. And when the traditional way of marketing for MSPs is like, oh, we'll just sign up for a system that other MSPs are doing, well, I hate to break it to you, but you're making the problem worse and you're spending a whole bunch of money on making it worse.
So something you said about this person that you brought in and kind of getting away from the founder-led bit is interesting because just a few weeks ago at IT Nation Connect Europe, Daniel Priestley, who's a fairly well-known guy building sales and marketing programs and things like this, one of the things he talked about actually was this idea that at least on LinkedIn, company brands don't work as well as personal brands, for example.
No, they don't.
And so, like, where does this connect to the thing you were saying about getting away from the founders, kind of presence and so on?
Yeah, so the MSP I was talking about is much more mature. They're on the MSP 501. They're over $6 million a year in revenue. They are in a different place than a lot of the earlier MSPs. He has done the founder-led sales, founder-led marketing to get to where he is today. It's been extremely successful.
I see. So it's just an effort, like it was his effort versus somebody else's effort is what you're kind of describing.
Well, it's part of the like as you grow as a business, right? When you're a founder, when you're a visionary, there's a time and place for you being the face of the business or the front of the business. But when you start thinking about M&A, when you start thinking about potentially becoming an employee-owned company, you have to start stepping back and elevating other people as thought leaders in your business. And that's what that was all about, was
Mm.
bringing forward other thought leaders in the business so that it wasn't just the one. It is 100% true. The average LinkedIn profile personal one has 10x the traction of a business profile. And on the back end, typically businesses are spending way more than 10x of dollars on their business profile versus like the founder just posting once a week or whatever. So when we talk about that, I have a whole how to get started on LinkedIn guide for MSP owners. But if you as an MSP owner are willing to post even a couple times a week, that is going to outperform your company's business page because people buy from people.
100%.
Yes, people do also buy from brands when we get to enterprise, when we get to large brands. Like, yeah, people buy from Nike, people buy from Disney, but no, they don't buy from your initials technology. They buy from you.
So we know like the MSP industry is like the biggest echo chamber ever. Is marketing for MSPs like equally echo chambery in your opinion?
I think it's even more echo chambery than the overall MSP space because we really do only have, if we sort of break down the marketing influencers into tiers, we have these kind of like tier one mainstays of the space who haven't worked for an MSP in 15 years. And they're preaching the exact same playbook and system that they preached 15 years ago. And quite frankly, it's not even really working anymore.
Are you going to name names or do you want to keep it civil?
Y'all, I don't need to name names. Every single person listening to this knows who I'm talking about. And it's no hate on them because who doesn't want to scale their business, right? Like, I have a system, it works really well, I have a following. Why would I not want to make more money doing less work versus being like custom and boutique and only being able to have a couple of clients? And that's not really a scalable solution. But then we've got these kind of tier two influencers, which I consider myself to be one, who are typically a little bit newer to the space. And even us, like, we definitely hang out together. We definitely talk to one another. And most people in the MSP space, whether they're in marketing or not, are really only going to MSP events. And I love our community. It's part of why I have stayed in the MSP space is the community, because there's nowhere else you really go in the tech world where people are this close, where there are quite so many events. And I mean, ultimately our events are parties, right? Let's be honest.
Yeah, truly.
And like, I love that I get to party with my besties as part of my job, but also because of that, I think we aren't often on the cutting edge and learning. Someone said to me that they felt like we were a decade behind, and I think that's pretty accurate. When I go to like SaaStr, for example, what they're talking about doing from a marketing perspective is so far ahead of where we are. And a lot of like what I do is going out and learning from other industries and bringing that back to the MSP space and sort of getting rid of what wouldn't work for us, right? Because how we sell SaaS and how we sell managed services is very different, but there are takeaways that can be put into our businesses. And especially because we're about 10 years behind, we're also 10 years behind the curve of understanding the shift that's happening in buyer decision-making. Your buyers aren't boomers anymore, guys. I'm really sorry to be the one to break it to you. Boomers are retiring. I'm a millennial. I'm 37.
They want to change nothing. Yeah, they want to change nothing at this point. They want things to smoothen out, if anything.
If they're still even owning a business, they are holding on until they're going to sell or give it to their son, whatever they're going to do with the next step. But like, the boomers are pretty much done. 67% of business decision makers are millennials, and the growing other percentage is not boomers, it's Gen X. I'm a millennial, I'm 37. Like, Dean Trempelis is a millennial. we're in our late 30s, early 40s now. We are directors, VPs, CEOs. We're making the business decisions, and we want to be able to access information online and research before we talk to you.
Hmm.
And most MSPs are just not optimized for that.
Yeah. There's so many places to go because it's just a Pandora's box when you start to scratch the surface on some of these things. But um, let me maybe pivot slightly back to the conversation around build versus buy. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing we talked about backstage for a minute was the maturity model of marketing at MSPs is maybe the thing that influences, because I feel like this comes up in many categories of the MSP world. We talk about it when we were referencing cybersecurity. The guys at Empath have regularly shared what the cybersecurity maturity model looks like, and a lot of it is revenue driven because revenue kind of dictates your size to a certain extent, and that to another extent dictates your capabilities. And this same model kind of translates to many aspects of the businesses too. In marketing, it's maybe a little bit different because even in large companies, we find that one person doing a lot of the work, one person kind of having the ingenious ideas, if there are any to be had. And so tell me a little bit about your thought process around maturity model in marketing, especially in the
Yeah.
context of MSPs, because I know you've worked with other industries too.
So there's a couple of different sort of personas I would put MSPs into. And there is multiple different levers. So it's not just about size. A lot of it is also the type of owner that you have
Mm,
and um, what you're doing for revenue, what your profit margins are looking like. But when we're talking about building marketing in-house, if you are a visionary, right? Meaning you generate more ideas a minute than you can take action on. And you're under $1 million a year in revenue, and you are not taking home more than $250,000 a year in salary, you should hire a cheap marketing assistant. 1099 them, like if you're not in a great model to be able to do W-2, just there's plenty of marketers out there that would be very happy to come work for you 1099. Um, and you can continue to be the visionary and generate brilliant ideas and then make them go do it. Find somebody who's really organized who will stay on you, the person who knows that you're ADHD and is going to chase you down and be like, hey, Mark, we said that today we were going to record this video and I need to record it today if you want it to go out. That person that's willing to put together an email list, that's willing to make a list of potential local events that you could attend, that will call up the Chamber of Commerce and find out if your competitors are already there. Um,
yeah,
that's willing to start
infinite,
building out the CRM. Yeah, there's
infinite
infinite
possibilities. Yeah.
tasks,
Yeah.
but like find yourself a nice marketing assistant. You don't need somebody senior with strategy. If you're a visionary and you have ideas, then there's sort of the other MSP owner that is not really like the business MSP owner, not the visionary. They're really a tech, like they came from a technical background. They probably were the IT director at some company and they realized that they could maybe make more money, but especially have more freedom and do the things that they want to do with their life if they owned their own business and they started that way. If that's you, you need a marketer that's a little bit more senior because you don't have marketing ideas. You think marketing's stupid and you can't be in charge of marketing when you think it's dumb. Um, so bring somebody in who's like director level or above to do the strategy, or hire somebody like me as a consultant to just come in and give you the strategy, and then you can hire that marketing admin to
Mm,
actually do it. Um, and then we've got the larger MSPs, right? And larger MSPs is where we typically start to see what I call the like hemorrhaging marketing funds MSPs. Some of these guys are spending $5,000 a month or more on marketing and getting nilch. Like they are not hitting ROI. And the primary reason is because there's no strategy behind it. So when we talk about like a marketing maturity model, so much of it has to do like there is an operational and systems side of things, but I'll be honest that marketing does not rely on great systems. It doesn't. And that I think that goes against the grain a little bit of what we're taught as business owners because systems do matter. But some of the best marketing I've ever seen, especially for small businesses and startups, is guerrilla marketing. It's literally just somebody who is super creative, who has ideas and will follow through on them. If we look at like some of the people in our own space that I've seen do that, like there's a ton. Imibot's like channel person there. I cannot believe that I'm blanking on her name because I love her so much right now. But like she has creative ideas and she follows through on them. It's not like she's like, oh, we've got the perfect, most organized CRM on the planet and it's got the best data quality. It's genuinely like she understands how people make decisions and knows how to build community. And I think that is especially relevant in the channel. But one of the other things that I see with MSP is that MSPs don't try to build their own channels, and they could. Most
What?
MSPs spend a ton of time in the echo chamber we've been talking about, talking to other MSP owners, not learning from their prospects what
Mm.
they really want and how they make decisions and their community. And if there's only one thing anybody takes away from this, takes away from me, it is you need to get in the community of your buyer. It's wonderful to have a peer community. Thumbs up, I love it. But if you're not in the community of your buyer, I don't know how you plan to acquire more revenue.
So maybe a tactical question on that, because on LinkedIn at least, which is where I find that most of the social media in the MSP space is happening, your community is kind of the network of people that you know, and you're not naturally connected to all the people in the industries of your clients. And so therefore you're kind of not in that community. You're not seeing that type of feed. You're not seeing those types of posts. And aside from, you know, a campaign to go out and find out who exists in that community and just try to connect to them, even if you have no relationship to them as a random IT person in a city that you're not in, how do you solve for that a little bit, especially if LinkedIn is the place?
So much of it comes right back to strategy, right? Which is you have to go where your buyers are. If your buyers aren't on LinkedIn, why are you on LinkedIn? For vanity metrics, to pat yourself on the back and be like, oh,
Oh,
look how many likes,
shish.
look how many likes I got from my friends. And I think a part of the challenge, right, is that because MSPs don't know much about sales and marketing, they tend to take their playbook from the vendors in the channel, and what's working really well for them is not going to work really well for you. We look at people like Dean Trempelis, Jason Slagle, um, all the empath guys. LinkedIn is working so well for them. You know why? Their buyers are MSPs.
Hmm.
They're not, most of those guys were MSPs at some point, but they're not anymore. And if you look historically backwards, when they were MSPs, they weren't on LinkedIn like that. When I worked for an MSP, I worked for two local MSPs here in Orlando. I built the Winter Park Maitland community page. It has 45,000 people in it. I own it. I'm the admin. I can market whatever I want to them. Now, I'm not selling for MSPs anymore, but when I was, that's what I did because my MSP buyers were not really on LinkedIn. I spent probably like 20% of my time on LinkedIn when I was working for an MSP because that MSP that I was working for did a lot of CPAs and law firms, and they are on LinkedIn. But the other MSP I worked for did a ton of construction, and a lot of like blue collar workers,
Yeah.
landscaping companies. They're not on LinkedIn. That's not where I was going to find them. I went to their local industry organizations. I went to the Chamber of Commerce. And so when it comes down to like where you spend your time and how you gain traction and getting in the community of your buyer, the first step is researching where they're really at. And the best way to research is to just talk to your clients that you already have a relationship with. So if you're an MSP owner and you don't know where to spend your time, my challenge to you is to call 3 of your clients today and ask them where they get their advice about vendors.
Super
And
actionable
then
advice. I love it.
and go be there.
Mm.
If they do it at the local chamber, you should go be at the local chamber. If they get it from their industry organization, go be there. But probably as an MSP, especially if you're selling to the small business and not going up market to mid market, they're probably not getting their buying information on LinkedIn. They may or may not be super technologically savvy depending on the industry that you target. Some of them might get their information from industry mags. Some might be going to big conferences that you could attend.
Hmm.
But start there. Just go find out, where do your buyers hang out and where do they get their information from?
It seems like people have conflated community and marketing in many ways because, like, if LinkedIn is the community, the social community for MSPs, they just they just stopped marketing altogether. And so I'm curious, like, when you start working with MSPs, if there's something in particular you have to undo that is, most obvious in most cases.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of different things. But in many cases, it's just how we think about marketing.
Hmm.
And I've always kind of considered myself to be an intuitive marketer, meaning that my gut is usually right. And I just kind of follow my gut and that pays off. I can't sell my gut to other people though. I can't be like, yeah, let's just get you really good gut instincts. Like that's not how that works. But a lot of what we typically have to unpack is the regimented thinking around marketing, because the number of MSPs I've talked to that are like, I really want to start a newsletter because that's what marketing is, and that's what I've heard marketing is, and that's what I think is going to
Hmm.
work. And I'm like, well, what are you going to put in a newsletter?
When you say regimented, do you mean consistency more than systems, or do you mean something else?
It's more so like that they're very black and white thinkers, because technology works like that,
Hmm.
right? It's either a one or it's a zero. And marketing is like rainbow colors everywhere. And so breaking them out of this mindset that it has to be a checklist, that it's that it that the, and that the checklist is the same for
Hmm.
everyone. Like almost everyone I talk to has at some point downloaded a checklist, downloaded a roadmap,
Hey, we
and
love
they're
our
like,
templates. We love our templates. What can I say?
exactly. And they're like, if I want to be successful in marketing, I have to get a list, create a newsletter, and that's it. The deals will just come right in. And more often than not, what we're circling back to at the beginning is product market fit. It's really easy to sell anything if you have good product market fit. But most of the MSPs I engage with are still trying to sell the exact same thing that they sold 20 years ago, 15 years ago. If anything has changed, it's that they've improved their cybersecurity offering. If that's working for you, I'd love to hear about it. Um, because my experience selling managed services has been that absolutely no one cares about your cybersecurity offering. um, they just assume that you, as their tech company, are going to provide some type of cybersecurity. They don't care, good, bad, indifferent. They just want it to work. Um, and so a lot of what we come back to is like, let's really think about what small businesses need today, because it's not printers and like the hardware and the wiring that used to be so important. And I think most MSPs have a really deep dependence on Microsoft. Um, Microsoft has inherently built their product to not be self-service. And so MSPs are basically this like GSP VAR sitting in between the buyer and Microsoft, of like, well, you can't self-admin Microsoft. Um, but the newer businesses, the younger people, millennials, Gen Z, signing up on Google, self-servicing it, getting themselves Slack, signing up for Zoom, they're managing it all themselves. Um, and so a lot of what I push on managed services providers about is, hey, is your product really the right fit for your market?
Interesting.
Especially when they're plateaued. And it really depends on the market. So like occasionally we're in industries where that's fine because there's a lot of compliance regulations. They're kind of cornered into doing Microsoft, or they've been on Microsoft, for 30 years and they're not moving. Um, but a lot of those businesses are starting to go away or starting to die out. And so a lot of what I talk about is like, well, how do you add value to newer businesses?
Hmm.
If the business is younger than 5, 10 years old, what value are you providing?
It seems like a
And
contrary motion though, because like the younger the business, also the more self-serve they want to buy in many ways. That seems to be the shift in the ownership model right now.
100%.
And so like, please help me understand or solve for that a little bit. How are you thinking about that?
I think for a lot of businesses, it depends on what your expertise is internally, right? And this is where I say, like, maybe as an MSP, stop leaning so much on the echo chamber and how MSP is defined, and instead consider yourselves to be a technology multiplier for businesses. Like, my
Mm,
job is to be your technology partner and to help you digitalize and get ready for the future. So instead of just coming in and being like, we close out your tickets, we handle your Microsoft, we give you a cybersecurity layer, it's RMM, we're monitoring, we're proactive, but it's really just like proactive tech support. Um, think about it as the grander picture of the technology problems that businesses have, the business problems that technology can solve, and where you sit in that ecosystem. And depending on your expertise, that's going to be a little bit different. So I've worked with MSP owners that are really good at process. And I'm like, why don't you add kind of a BPO component to your MSP that is like, yeah, we're doing this, but also we help you tighten up these processes so you don't even need this as much.
yeah.
Um, talk to MSPs that are really good at systems that have a high operational maturity level. And I'm like, well, why don't you add that into your offering? Like, what are you
It's
actually really good at?
It's what I keep
Uh,
saying. We're returning to consulting, and it's so obvious that that's the place where most businesses need the most help is actually, business process optimization. The relationship piece comes from that type of work more so
mm-hmm.
than from just, fixing servers and workstations. So it's interesting that we're kind of almost backpedaling or just coming around full circle back to where we
I
started.
think it's pairing them together though, right? Because most businesses, yes, they can self-serve with simple tools, but eventually they're going to scale and they're probably going to hit, like a glass ceiling of self-service, right? So when you're a startup, you're starting a new business, you're like, I'm going to sign up for Google, Slack, Zoom, done, right? And then you have 150 employees, and you as the owner do not want to manage 150 logins across 3 different tools, and probably over time you've added more tools, right? So now you've got a CRM. You've probably got like secure file sharing somewhere. Maybe you've added Dropbox into the mix, whatever. Like the
Mm,
business has grown, the logins have grown. So the consulting, while also managing services and saying, but it has to be both now, I think, because you can't just do the work when the owner of the business that you serve doesn't know the work that needs to be done. You have to come in and show them what needs to be done and help them evolve with time. And I think a lot of that, MSPs really have to learn how to be on the cutting edge of technology again so that they can be trusted advisors in addition to doing managed services.
mm,
The hottest piece, I think, a lot of it is just AI and automation. Um, it's super hot to talk about right now, but the average business owner has no idea how to use it, particularly no idea how to use it securely. And so coming in and saying like, hey, we can help you be more productive. We can help you evolve and be more tech forward and inject these things into your business. But first, we've got to tighten up this cybersecurity hygiene because otherwise this is a smoking gun.
yeah. Yeah, and I see this play out as CPA firms or ERP implementers and such who have that boardroom level relationship are now out there buying MSPs because they see the opportunity to keep hold of doing all that tech work, but they have that vantage point or advantage of having been in the boardroom from the get go. And the average MSP is kind of trying to work backwards from there. That they were, relegated down to this, vendor level type of relationship, doing, keep the lights on type of work. And now it's interesting that we're having difficult conversations around, well, I can't get my clients to approve their projects. I can't get clients to like even show up for a QBR. And what I mean by client is, the executive at a client that has the signing power and so on. So it is interesting. KPIs. Let me go back to KPIs for a minute because I feel like a lot of this plays into this whole thing. What or maybe not necessarily KPIs. We'll talk about that more in a second. But I feel like there's all these beliefs about marketing that, for better or worse, we come into the industry. The echo chamber has delivered those to us on a silver platter. What do you think is the biggest psyop or lie that MSPs believe about marketing that is maybe just so unfounded, or from a different era or industry that we should not even be applying?
Um, I think that the belief that it's all or nothing
Mm,
is that's the one I run into the most, that I think is really outdated, because they've had these experiences usually coming from marketing agencies, where the agency's like, well, if you're not willing to spend $10,000 a month with us, we can't help you. Um, it's just so wrong. Like, you can do great marketing for 500 bucks. Um, and in fact, I think some of the best marketing, especially when you're small, shouldn't be costing you anything. And that you should do it yourself. I think that's another one, is just that, like, I'm not a marketer, so I can't do marketing. Like, yes, you can. You can be a great marketer if you just lean in, because people buy from people. People buy from people that they like. Put yourself out there, put your authentic self out there, go where you are wanted. Super early on in my career, when I was like a little baby salesperson, I did the whole shebang, right? So I wore makeup every day. My hair was done. I wore jewelry. I had like the jacket all the time. I had the pencil skirt, heels, and I thought that's who I had to be to sell. And fast forward a little bit, I got more comfortable. I learned a little bit more about buyer psychology. And instead of that, I just don't go anywhere that I'm not wanted. So if I would have to dress like that to be there, I'm probably just not going to go. I'm going to go where people think it's fine if I have pink hair. They're fine if I drop an F bomb. They find me relatable and likable, because those are my buyers. And whoever you are, whatever your personality is, you can be like super conservative and Christian. You can be the complete opposite, really, really progressive and out there. You can be loud. You can be quiet. You can be neurotypical. You can be neurodivergent, whatever. Your like tribe, your community is out there, and your community are the people that are the most likely to buy from you.
yeah.
And like, people who like you are going to buy from you.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to try and figure out the balance of. Like I said, we've conflated community with prospect pool, in many respects. And the average MSP probably, I don't know what the typical lead gen capabilities of your average 10-person MSP is, if they're doing everything great. But I would say, from a capacity perspective, and to another point of Daniel Priestley's, your capacity to delight means you should probably not take on 3 new customers every month if your marketing is really, hitting its stride. And so you create the oversubscription problem, right?
I
Get people, yeah.
just put together a session on that for, I forget which conference, maybe MSP Summit. But talking about matching your lead generation, selling how you service. And like, it's one of those things, the outsourcing model, right? MSPs typically sign up for these snake oil salesmen, that are like, we'll book you 20 meetings a month. You cannot bring on 20 customers a month. You have a 5-person service desk. That you do not have the capacity to onboard like that. You're going to kill your business. In fact, my agency was a perfect example of scaling too quickly. We grew from 6 people to 25 people in less than a year. We 7x'd our revenue, and then we crashed and burned and I had a mental breakdown. Like, don't do that. Listen to me, because I did it and it's bad. Scale responsibly, and 1 good customer is worth 20 bad customers. Like,
Yeah.
slowing down a little bit and being mindful and purposeful in who you want to attract. And I think that's, if we kind of just like go back to the very, very top, we have to figure out who our target is. Because even when we were talking about, go into the community of your buyer. Well, if the community of your buyer is anybody with at least 5 PCs within 50 miles of you, that's a really, really loosely defined target. What do they all have in common? Very, very little. But if we say, I really want to work with law firms that are tech forward because they're in an area of law that's important, that have very specific compliance needs, that are using pieces of technology that I know how to service. Let's just say, like, you will touch perfect law, that they use a tool that you can service. They're in a specific industry.
Yeah.
And I think MSPs tend to get really, really stuck on size from like a user count perspective. And I really challenge that, because that's not what matters. You care about them being able to pay you what you need to make to do service delivery right. Because obviously, like, most MSPs these days, like, they have some type of QBR component or VCIO component. There's an overhead for servicing a customer. So you can't just be doing the ones and twosy clients because they won't pay you enough. But what if they would? What if I came to you as like a 5-person CPA firm and I said, I am bullish on AI and automation. We have very specific compliance needs. I want our cybersecurity to be super tight. Like, we are Fort Knox. We have very, very high profile clients. I cannot let their data get leaked. And I'm willing to pay you $10,000 a month to make sure that happens. There's only 5 of us, but like, we really deeply care. Are you going to turn me away because I'm only 5 people? So like,
It's yeah. I have thoughts. Let me see if I can articulate a comment. I think the challenge that you're describing is that a lot of those business owners don't think like that when they're looking for an IT provider, because of the problem that we inherently created as IT providers, which is that we relegated ourselves down to a vendor level, tech role.
mhm.
And so there's this whole actual relationship piece that has to come back, I feel like, before we start to have that level of conversation with that type of prospect. It's funny because I just had ChatGPT the other day do a deep research of, go find me some MSP websites that are talking about, oh, give your technology to us, so you don't have to think about it. Specifically, like, almost advertising to the client that they can abdicate their responsibility or accountability for IT. And it came back with like literally hundreds of them.
I'm sure.
Yeah. And so I don't know where you stand on that little bit of like positioning specifically, but I'm sure you're on the side of like, stop talking about being just a workstation fixer, because that's not the thing that's going to get you into the, boardrooms to talk with the clients that you actually want. So
And I think
there's,
there's such a challenge around, again, because we live in this echo chamber of where we think we know what's important to people. We've gotten really far away from actually knowing what's important to them, because we're
mm,
not spending enough time talking to clients, talking to prospects. Um, but when it comes to like the website, one, if your language is the same as any competitor in your market, cut that shit out. Like, stop. What are you doing? But secondarily, really focus on the problems that you can solve. Um, yes, there are definitely businesses that consider technology to be a problem, period. They're out there. There are those businesses that are kind of tech phobic, where they're just like, technology is a problem and I want to abdicate it. But one, are those the clients you want? Because when I talk to MSPs, they're like, no, we want like tech forward, like ones that value cybersecurity to come to us. And I'm like, okay, well, your website is really speaking in language that is like, the only people that would be interested in this are people who are like, I just want to get technology away from me. I don't want to think about it anymore.
yeah,
So
counterproductive.
yeah, in that vein, really dig deeper into who the target is. And so like, part of that is figuring out what problems you can solve for a persona. And your persona doesn't have to be hyper niche by industry, but you should have a niche. And maybe your niche is blue collar, or maybe it's just like other B2B businesses. Maybe it's service-based businesses. Maybe it's online businesses. Maybe it's remote. Maybe it's hybrid. Maybe it's companies that are working in person. Like, I don't know, but go look at your client list, cut it in half. Well, cut it in whatever chunks to get to follow the 80-20 rule. Find the 20% of your clients that are paying 80% of the bills, profile them, find out what they have in common, define that as a niche, and then go talk to them and find out what problems you solve for them.
Mm, totally.
Because it's like, it's probably more specific than you think it is. What I hear a lot from MSPs is like, oh, we have better customer support, we respond more quickly, we do more tickets more rapidly, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, do your clients really give a shit about any of that? Like the customer service
They
piece,
expect
yes, they
that,
care
yeah.
about. Okay, so there we go. Doing the SOW is not a marketing edge. Like that is the expectation when you get into business with someone, is that they will deliver on the contract.
Mm.
It's not your marketing material. But if you talk to your clients, you'll probably find out that there are niche problems that you solve for them. Like
Yeah.
before we had you, I could never seem to get a hold of Marcy in the office because her line never rang her desk. It always was going straight to voicemail, and our previous IT company could not figure out what was going on. You guys came in, you did a full reset of our phone systems, and now everybody rings properly. Our phone tree works. That's a problem we solved, okay? Before we worked with you, we had a whole bunch of data silos. All of our information was in very specific systems. And if I wanted to put together a document for a specific case or a specific client, I had to check 4 or 5 different places to get that information. After working with you, like our QuickBooks and our CRM and our cloud tools are all integrated. And so I just go into one system and search, and now I can find all the information that I need. That's problem solving.
And that's
And
storytelling too, which is, I think, is another part that's grossly missing from how MSPs do marketing overall. Like you go to look at any website today, and 95% of MSPs are just a catalog of services, right? As opposed to a story told about a problem solved, which is so frustrating to see, because it's like, okay, well, yeah, I can buy that from anybody on this, strip of land, of street, or what have you. So
it's SEO soup from back when that worked.
yeah. SEO soup. That's great. I'm going to write that down.
But that's not really, it's not really how people use the internet anymore. If you look at the traffic on something like Orlando MSP, probably 80% of the people Googling Orlando MSP
Or MSPs.
are list building to sell.
or vendors.
Or yeah, that's what I mean. They're vendors or MSPs. Like they're doing research for their own purposes to sell whatever. Maybe only 20% of that is actual real people who might be in market for your solution Googling. But what someone might be Googling
we're increasing our own CPC. What are we doing?
Right. And now we're making the cost go up. But what people might be Googling is like how to upgrade from Windows 10 to Windows 11 or Windows 12, whatever. What do I do now that it's Windows 11 end of life? I can't get my printer to print. My Dropbox has suddenly unsynced from my computer. What do? Though, like that's the type of stuff people are Googling their problems. They're asking questions. Good marketing, good SEO is very much based on they ask, you answer. It is what are people looking for when they are having the headaches that you can solve for, and how can you get them interested in you? How do you collect data and create some type of kind of like organic nurture so that you're staying in touch with those people without annoying the shit out of them? Because one of the biggest challenges of selling managed services, of marketing managed services, we have inherently long sales cycles. Joe can't just come out and buy a new MSP today because he hates the technician at his current MSP. They are in a contract. And hating your tech is not actually an out in the SLA. So you have to nurture them and keep track of, what you've seen from them in the past. And like, yes, there's a lot that can be done with a modern and advanced like marketing automation system or a CRM to track all of that. But you can also just like manually put notes into any basic off like the $10 a month CRM. You don't have to spend a whole bunch of money on this to make it work for you. But like take good notes and stay in touch with people.
Sure.
And Make sure that you're top of mind when they can finally make a decision. Do that by adding value consistently without any expectation of return. And that for me comes very much from like my childhood. The way my parents raised me was like, you give without expectation of return because of you, not because of others. It is the number one thing that has impacted my sales career and made me really good at what I do. When I go back and I ask people why they bought from me, they say, I really trusted you. You didn't put any pressure on me. And I felt like you did a lot for me without ever asking me to pay you.
Yeah. Impatience with action, patience with results.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Let me pivot us slightly back to the whole build versus buy, because one of the comments that I wrote in the little description for the thing was whether the long term valuation of a business is helped by, or maybe affected by whether the business is insourcing or outsourcing marketing. And I was wondering if outsourcing for the longer term maybe stunts growth in ways that MSPs don't expect. And maybe we haven't seen the long enough tail of this to really be able to answer. But I'm curious how insourcing versus outsourcing plays a role in that long term
I
valuation.
think like any good question, the answer is it depends. But most of the time, insourcing is going to be less expensive than outsourcing. So if we're trying to figure out our EBITDA and make an exit, um, we want to look profitable as a business, which means lowering expenses. Um, the outsourcing model, part of the challenge is that most marketing agencies plateau in what they can deliver for you. If you kind of look at the agency ecosystem outside of MSPs too, by the way, because like the MSP ecosystem with marketing agencies is so like minute compared to the overall space. But most agencies, you've got kind of like the general, we do it for you, outsource your marketing to us agency. The challenge there is that no one is good at everything. They're just not. They're kind of trying to promise you the enterprise marketing team at a
Hmm.
quarter of the cost. The math does not math. They're not really good at everything. And the first thing that agencies pull away from you when they themselves are seeing their margins not being large enough is the high end, expensive, strategic people.
The ones with the good ideas.
Yeah, the ones with the good ideas. And so they end up just kind of like doing the same thing month after month after month, even after it stopped working. I will say that in my experience, anything can work. There is not a single marketing tactic I've seen that I've been like, no, that could never work. They can all work done right for the right audience. And then when it comes to like the the breaking point, I think MSPs tend to be a little bit more patient than a lot of other industries would be in terms of their relationship with marketers. They fall a lot for the like, oh, marketing just takes time and this will get better. And like I've talked to MSPs that are like, yeah, we've had the same agency for 5 years. And I'm like, what has been the impact of that? And they're like, oh, nothing.
Yeah, when
For
asked
me,
about impact, but when asked about vanity metrics, maybe it's a different answer, which is back to the point of vanity metrics, right?
and that's most agencies are reporting on vanity metrics to begin with. Like that is all that they can report on. And this is the other challenge of like that build versus buy, right? Is that when you are buying outsourced marketing, all they can deliver to you is vanity metrics because they are not inside your company to be able to track what happens after. So like yeah, the emails are getting opened, the social posts are getting seen, their clicks are happening, but they are typically not tracking through to revenue,
Yeah.
and they have no ability to coach you if you are losing deals, right?
And
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 like why that's happening.
and do you feel that MSPs that do insource are actually connecting those things together well enough, or does it still take time? Like, because I feel like I meet a lot of MSPs, especially a little smaller ones, that bring in a marketing person and they literally have no visibility into any impact that they're creating. It's literally just to run the marketing tasks and kind of,
Yeah, it's tough because I think most marketing metrics are vanity metrics. So it's really tough with marketing to truly measure impact. But my top question is, has sales gotten easier?
hmm,
Good marketing makes selling easier. It means that when I cold call someone,
I'm
cold,
flipping the page on my notes. I have so many notes.
that I cold call someone and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh yeah, MKC, I know who you guys are." Marketing did a good job.
Hmm.
Or when I'm in the sales process and somebody asks me, like the prospect asks me something, they're like, "Oh, well, do you have like a case study about that?" And I'm like, "Sure fucking do. Yeah, I do. I have a case study about that because marketing made it for me and I can speak to it." The biggest problem that I see with sales and marketing, not just in MSPs, but in all industries, is that they're not connected. If you don't have a good feedback loop, if sales and marketing are enemies, you are going to have problems. Now, in a traditional outsourcing model, sales and marketing frequently aren't even talking to each other to
Hmm.
be enemies to begin with. The only thing sales typically has to say about marketing in that situation is like, I don't know why we're spending money on it, right? When I talk to like the single sales guy at an MSP, he's like, I don't know why we're spending $5,000 a month with this company because they never give me any leads. And that's the sales guy just cares about like, are they giving me leads? And they're not. And that's the frustration there. When it's internal, though, a lot of times sales and marketing are at constant odds with each other because they both want recognition, right? So marketing wants to be recognized for bringing in the lead. Sales wants to be recognized for closing the lead. In a healthy revenue organization, they work hand in hand and they are partners. And like when I was a VP of sales, I met with my CMO every single week. And that meeting started with 5 minutes of praise. Thank you for this. Thank you for this. Thank you for this. Thank you for all the things that you do for me. I really appreciate this. The website looks great. This, that, and the other thing. And then we would drill into this is what's actually going on with our teams. This is what I'm seeing. And my job as the VP of sales was to feed back to the CMO what my sales team needed. Because a lot of marketing is ultimately sales enablement. It's like, how does the sales team sell? What do they need to be successful? And then they would feed us ideas back and forth too. Like I would be like, these leads
Yeah.
weren't qualified. They would ask why. If you aren't having those conversations, marketing goes nowhere. And I think I run a lot of like revenue L10s for clients. And for me, that one of the primary goals of running a revenue L10 is to have sales and marketing working together on the strategy
Sure.
because 99% of marketers are never going to have a chance to talk to clients. It's not, especially if you're outsourcing, right? Like if you go hire some random agency, you're not going to be like, sure, come in, talk to my 5 best customers. Be scared to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But sales talks to prospects every day. Sales talks to clients more often than marketing does. So being able to close that feedback loop and for sales to be able to say, like, I just like imagine if every time you closed a deal, the salesperson told marketing, I just closed this deal. Here were the 3 problems that they were having. Here's how we solved them. Can you make that marketing?
Yeah.
And I think it's why a lot of times for these smaller MSPs, the best thing they can do is hire somebody who's good at both. Like hire a revenue person, not a salesperson, not a marketing person, because
Hmm.
that person will be their own feedback loop.
So a lot of the things and how you're talking about them is feels very consultative, which kind of speaks to the thing you were telling me a little bit about is making the shift or pivot from agency to consultancy. And I want to ask you more about the thing driving that for you. Like why the shift? What do you think you can do better as a consultant versus an agency, and or what's driving it personally for you?
Yes, there were a lot of things about that. I mean, we talked about hyperscale, scaling too quickly, bottoming out. A lot of the shift has been personal. So in January, my COO integrator left for a much higher paying job. I could not match what she was being offered. And then we had our team lead, SDR, leave right around the same time. And we had a lot of turnover in the SDR team, which had become more and more common. So between 2023 and 2025, I saw like a 500% increase in SDR turnover. And we really dug into that to see like, is it us? And recognized that it's just a high churn role right now, and that the nature of work is is struggling right now. But ultimately, I got my ovarian cancer diagnosis at the beginning of the year. And I had known for a while that I was working way too many hours, way too hard. But like any other business owner, I was just shoving that down deep. I was like, it's fine. I just have to get, I don't know if you've ever been there, but I kept telling myself that it would be over soon. You know, like I just have to get through this quarter. Next quarter will
Mm,
be easier. I just have to get through
no,
this quarter. Next quarter will
it's
be
a
easier.
vortex. It never stops, right?
It never stops until you really get a really strong integrator or a really strong operator into the business to help. But business ownership it's a lot. And I have 4 children. Most of them are still pretty young. So I have twin 7-year-olds, an 11-year-old, and an 18-year-old. And I realized that I was genuinely prioritizing work over my family, and that's never who I wanted to be. So that's on the personal side. A lot of it was like, I just need to work less and do what I'm best at. I am best as a consultant. I'm really good at strategy, but I'm really not the person you want to deploy the tactics. I have, but that drains me and I burn out so much faster.
Yeah.
And then on the business side, what we saw was when I did the math, I was like, either I have to continue to churn talent, both on the sales and marketing side of my team, because I can't pay them the value that they're inserting into an organization. So, for example, if I have a really high performing SDR that's booking 15, 20 meetings a month, I cannot pay them what a 20 meeting a month SDR would make at a SaaS company, because a 20 meeting a month SDR at a SaaS company would be making about $150,000 a year. I can't pay them that. And and on the flip side, when I looked at clients, I was like, most of my clients can't go up in what they're paying very much. And our profit margins were really slim. And so I just kind of looked at the agency model. I talked to a lot of my other agency pals, and they basically told me that I could continue to be an agency and go back to SaaS, back to infrastructure, which is kind of the world that I came from, or I could be a consultant for MSPs. But that the ROI was not going to be there in being an agency for MSPs, because
Yeah.
I hate to break it to y'all, I love you so much, but you're cheap. Um, like if I go to like I worked for Ericsson for a lot of years. I worked for Reblaze. If I go to like one of them and I'm like, hey, this is going to be $15,000, $20,000 a month. Cool. They're not going to bat an eye. They're like, sweet. Now, to be fair, they target more enterprise. So,
yeah.
A $15,000 a month spend, if I get them one enterprise client a year on that, we're golden. Like I'm
Well,
winning.
and geographically unspecific, which is the opposite of the how hyper local MSPs tend to be on average, right?
Exactly. So like basically infinite TAM, total addressable market is huge. And we're going after companies that are signing like 3 to 5 year contracts that are starting at $50,000 a month. We get one win a year, and my team is like, we get flown out to California. They're bowing to us, But in the MSP space, budgets are typically more in the like $1,000 to $5,000 range. And what can reasonably be done inside of that budget isn't great. And it depends on the MSP, but most MSPs are looking at like $2,500 a month average
But
monthly recurring.
MSPs are so great. They're doing such important work. This is the signal the world is sending you to continue working with MSPs to help them continue doing their great work, saving businesses.
And a lot of that's ethical for me too. Like when I left the enterprise B2B tech space, I said that I didn't want to help people buy their second yacht anymore. It was sort of my man on the mountain moment where I was like, I don't want to be doing what I do so that rich people can flaunt their wealth. And I have nothing against being rich. Like you work hard, you make a lot of money, good for you. But there wasn't really like giving back and impact. When I even if the impact we make with an MSP is like, oh, we get them 4 deals in a year, okay? 4 new deals means they probably hire a new tech. They're probably hiring that new tech without a college degree. They're probably going to like sponsor the local softball team. That money goes back into their local community.
Yeah.
None of the MSP owners I know are buying their second or third yachts. So the impact we can make is so much more important to me. Like most MSP owners are real salt of the earth people. Like they work hard, they care about their employees, they care about their clients, and that's where I want to be able to help. So I don't mind not making as much money. But the economy of scale of being an agency in the MSP space was either I had to become the next companies I didn't name earlier and sell a system, which I could do. I have systems, I've built them, and I could just put everybody on a system. It would not challenge my brain. It would not make me feel good about what I did. And then I could scale that and there would be plenty of margin. But there's companies doing that. I think Tech Tribe's doing a great job. I think MSP Camp is doing a great job. I don't want to become just another one of those. Like I love Paul Green's Marketing Edge. Like there are plenty of companies already out there where you can sign up for low cost, enter a system, and kind of do a done with you option. And I didn't want to become that. I didn't think that the need and niche was there. And so where I felt like the need was still there and I could still, make decent profit, and not have as much bloat in the company and not have as many people to manage, was just to go back to consulting, which was where I started anyways. Like I'm a consultant at heart. It's been what I've done off and on for the last 10 years. I'm good at it. I can make a lot of impact in it. And it also allows me to encourage MSPs to do what I think they should be doing, which again is building and not buying. Like hire somebody, invest in them. You can have me come train them if you want. And then the same way that you on your tech team have those people that have probably been with you 5, 10, 20 years that are invaluable resources to your business. What if you have that on the marketing side, on the sales side, someone who is super loyal to you because you gave them a chance when no one else would? And now they're good at it and they do a great job and they care about your company and they understand your values and they know what a good client looks like. Usually when you engage an agency, they're like, all client are good client, all meeting are good meeting. Like that's the agency model is like,
It's
I booked a
funny.
meeting.
It's funny how similar the journey you're describing sounds to like what MSPs are going through to some extent. A bit of the, we over rotated on the standardization. We systemized everything. We got to the point where we have this little machine working, and then suddenly it was too much, and we're back to this creating impact, having better relationships, changing the nature of the conversations, and it's. My point is that it's not unique to the MSP industry, that this is how the nature of business is changing overall. People care about that impact in ways that we maybe didn't anticipate when we were thought that the work we were doing was special. It was 20 years ago. It was maybe 10, 15 years ago, and it not really is anymore. And so that's super interesting.
And I think there's a time and place for everything, both for MSPs and agencies. Like there's a time for your business when managed services is going to make sense. But I would hope that the MSPs out there that are listening, when it gets to the point where a client would be better off hiring an internal IT director, that you tell them that. And that's sort of like where I got to with the agency, was that I was having more of those conversations than not. I was going to my clients that had been with me 2, 3 years and being like, I really think you'd be better off. You are at a size and a revenue that it makes a lot more sense for you to just go hire a marketing director or a revenue director that'll do sales and marketing. We can't do much more for you. Like the engine's built. It's just going to keep working.
Well, folks, you heard it here first. MSPs, get out of LinkedIn already. Go find where your customers are hanging out and talk to them over there, because that's the place that's going to help you the most.
They might be on LinkedIn.
They might
be on LinkedIn. But if they're not, go look at your last 10 LinkedIn posts. And if all of your engagement is from your peers, it's time to look at where else you can be spending your time online.
Yeah, I feel like the posts that I see myself from MSPs tend to be either on either side, like grossly apart from each other on the spectrum of the kinds of posts. It's either all geared towards getting the likes and impressions from fellow MSPs because they're creating spicy content for that purpose, and it could be raking a vendor over the coals, and or on the very other side of that, which is actually marketing to their prospects because they're telling an interesting story and hoping and they're actually boosting their posts and finding geographies and people and business types that might see them. So it's that's happy medium, that gray area in the middle that maybe we're just not so good at because the whole black and white thing, right? The zeros and ones, and this is, I think, the
It's also
challenge. Yeah.
it's also understanding that conversations matter more than those vanity metrics we were talking about. My posts don't always get great engagement, but some of the posts that have performed the best for me got garbage engagement. The magic happened in my inbox because MSPs tend to be a little bit more introverted. So they're not commenting on the post, liking it, engaging with it, sharing it. They're DMing me.
Hmm.
And so if you have a market that's more like that, where you're working with people who aren't super social creatures, where they're not liking, commenting, and engaging, if you're getting DMs, that's so much better. Like, do not worry about the vanity metrics. Worry about whether or not people are having conversations with you. People
Yeah.
call me about my LinkedIn post. Like my phone rings and they're like, "Hey, I saw your LinkedIn post and I want to book a meeting."
Yeah.
That's way better than them leaving a comment.
Okay, so we got like through an eighth of the notes that we had of things to
You'll have
talk
to have
about
me
today.
back.
Part two is going to be necessary. We'll make sure to get that in the books because I think there's a lot more things to talk about. Building sustainable sales engines. I want to get more into that ethical marketing stuff. How MSPs position their mission, which I think is still so like offside. Like we just, MSPs haven't figured this out really well yet. And I had this is just your notes. My notes even had more questions and things. And so, folks, well, Megan, thank you so much for hanging out. I try to keep them within the realm of the hour because otherwise people might be scared away to
Who's
go
going to
see.
watch a 3-hour podcast, honestly?
Well, this is the thing that's interesting about marketing that is changing. I find myself more regularly going to interact with long form content than I would with like a 10-minute podcast episode. Because I know in the 10 minutes, either it has to be such a strong idea that's going to leave me thinking for weeks, or it's just going to be a pitch slap, or it's going to be some very superficial thing with no insight or no, meat to the potatoes. So I find myself going to watch 2 and 3 hour interviews. I'm a musician, and one of the things I watch a lot is this guy Rick Beato, who does these interviews with now big names because he's kind of a big YouTube personality. And he now got interviewed by Rick Rubin, who's a famed producer and all this stuff. And these are all like 2 to 3 hour conversations almost. And I like them because people can explore their ideas a little bit more deeply and thoroughly than just sort of being under the gun of the time clock for the sake of putting out a marketing piece of content, right?
I'm the
So,
odd man out. I still prefer to read. And I know that that's not how other people enjoy to engage content. Like I know video is king, but for me, like I'll read a blog post, I'll read a book. Don't watch very much video.
hmm. Yeah, I maybe do both. I maybe do both a little bit. Like sometimes if it's a course or something that is more didactic in nature, there's some accompanying material. I like watching the video and reading through it, and it just helps me. I actually end up writing most of what I'm hearing. That I learn it better that way than just reading it. So I end up with the same result, which is, a document that had all the content, but now I've written it and my internalization process is so much better in that scenario. But, whatever works, right?
Exactly.
Well,
Well, we'll
Megan,
have to catch up again soon.
yes, absolutely. I promise we're going to do a second one and get into some of the other topics. Also, like the industry is shifting a lot, and it'd be kind of cool to sort of track a bit of the trends. as they are shifting literally underneath our feet, and seeing how people are adjusting. I'd love to hear more about your pivot into consulting out of the agency model. That's kind of fascinating too. And so thank you so much for coming to hang out for a bit. Thanks for joining us. There were a few people watching live. We got one comment from Tim who said, LOL, MSPs are cheap. I guess
I call it like I see them, folks. I'm sorry.
well, yeah. No, we always feel called out, but we know it's true, and maybe we get angry because we know it's true. But either way, I think it was well said, and we'll catch everybody the next time. We're here every Friday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, unless I'm not. Sometimes there's travel, sometimes there's holidays, sometimes there's other things, but otherwise you can go catch all our other episodes on the YouTube channel. At Go Skillpad is the handle. Year and a half worth of really interesting conversation, most of them 45 to hour and a bit, where we get to really expand on topics like this one, which is this marketing bit. And so we're gonna have you back, Megan. Thank you so much, and everybody else, thank you again for joining. We'll see you on the next one. Stay backstage for a minute.